and understand their feedback. And this ranges from, what do you want us to put on our product roadmap next? How do you want us to prioritize our product roadmap? What's happening with our competition? Ideally, it's all about understanding what you need and helping the business give it to you. I am based in the United States, and I'm coming up next month on 1 year at Salesforce. And lots of you, I'm guessing, know my fantastic peer, Erica Kuhl, who leads our success community, user groups, MVP programs. And so what we try to do is take all the goodness of things that we get out of the success communities and the idea exchange, match that with the feedback that our team gathers from surveys and focus groups and live events, and ideally marry that together to be able to share back with the business, whether it's by geography or the kind of job role that people are in or what industry you're in, what it is you need from us. And so one of the interesting opportunities that we had was, as a business, when we were listening to our customers, one of the things that we learned is that sometimes there is a big disconnect between the work that all of us sitting in this room are doing every day and the problems that our bosses are trying to solve. Have you ever been in that situation where you don't exactly understand how the work you're doing fits with what your boss is trying to accomplish? We heard that a lot. The other thing that we heard, by the way, from our executives at lots of customers was that Salesforce sometimes did a better job of understanding what people like our developers and admins and first-line leaders needed, sometimes than the people who were writing the checks. So the way that we framed up this research, and I'll share with you what we put together, is really understanding what is it that your boss wants you to know. So think about this as we sat in a room, we did interviews, very in-depth, one-on-one with executives to ask them some questions. And the goal is to be able to help each one of you understand, how does all of that work you're doing fit into a problem your boss is trying to solve? Have you ever heard that saying that your job is to make your boss successful, right? So what I've found as I've been meeting with some teams is this is a great way to go back and ask some of your bosses if these are problems they're trying to solve and help piece together the role that you're playing in helping them do that. So what we did in this research is we interviewed 47 different executives. And when we started this out, because we were talking to chief marketing officers, chief information officers, VPs of service, and VPs of sales, we thought we would hear lots of different needs, lots of different problems. And one of the things that really surprised us was, across those 4 job titles, there were a series of common themes and common problems that they were all trying to solve. So as we've pieced this together, we share this with our customers, we share this internally, because what it helps us understand is there's an important opportunity for all of us to create a link from top to bottom in our customer organizations, and also at Salesforce, frankly, to build the bridge between that top-line problem that the whole executive suite is focused on, all the way down through what's every person's role in the organization in helping to solve that. Just so you also understand, especially where we're sitting right now, it was a global study, so we didn't just talk to people in the US, for example. So it was a global study, and we talked to people across all different kinds of industries. And so what I'm about to share with you are, I'll call them the universal truths and findings that came out of those conversations for the executive suite. And then I'll talk a little bit about some of the ways that we're putting this into action at Salesforce. Now, I'll be interested to hear from all of you as we go through this and beyond. Are these problems you're trying to solve in your organizations? And do you have any creative solutions that we could use to feature you and or to share? So first one around the common themes as we got into it was this concept, and we tagged it, adoption is the new ROI. One of the things that we found is sometimes when we have a conversation with your organizations and with each one of you, at Salesforce, we're focused on how do you measure value, right? How do you measure the value of your partnership with us and your relationship? What is it that makes you buy more? And we tend to default to this idea that it's how much money that you spend right up front to implement, and then what it costs on an ongoing basis to do business with us. Well, every executive that we talked with said, it doesn't matter how great your solution is. We have to get every person in the organization to be using that solution as part of their workflow on a daily basis. Because you can show us a fantastic demonstration and we might buy it, but when you sell us something for £1 million and 100 people use it, it's kind of expensive. If you sell it to us for £1 million and 10,000 people use it every day, now we're getting into a different conversation. So one topic that our executives surfaced to us in that conversation was, in order to drive adoption of solutions, whether that's Salesforce or some kind of app that the smart people in this room build on top of that helps you be productive in your business, what it puts the senior executives in your organization into the place of doing is leading a change in culture. Because for the first time, they're asking you all, and all of us, to work differently. Right? When a new technology solution or a new app comes to the organization, and the goal is to get as much out of it as possible, it means multiple people in the organization probably have to change the way you work. Because you've already figured out how to get a task done, right? And when you figured it out, you feel really efficient. And so when we ask you to stop and then change to something different, what's our first reaction? What do you normally do? Yeah, resist, right? Resist and keep doing your workaround. So especially when you think about some of these roles like a chief marketing officer, they haven't been tasked with doing the adoption of tools in the past. So you think about now taking on a new role, managing culture change, and it's no longer about just capturing the heart of a story and building a brand. It's also about driving really traditional metrics like technology adoption. So lots of requests for please share use case data with us about anyone who's doing this well. Second theme, every company and every executive that we talked with said our top mandate from our chief executive officer is customer experience. Raise your hand if your company has a customer experience initiative. Pretty much everybody, right? So here's what people said. Okay, here's the deal. We know we should have it. No one wants to be the company who has an executive that stands up and says, we don't really think customer experience is a priority. That's why we're not working on it, right? So everyone has these mysterious customer experience initiatives. And the challenge that we heard over and over and over again is, how do you define what that is? What are the metrics of success? And who normally owns it? Because customer experience, all of them told where everybody owns it and nobody owns it. Sometimes the CEO is accountable. Sometimes we get tired of execs being accountable, so we push it down in the organization, right? We say, all of us sitting in this room, customer experience is very important. Just build some tools and workflows that make it easier for our customers to do business with us, right? Have any of you been caught in that loop? And so where we see opportunity here, and this is one way that we're thinking about this in terms of what thought leadership can Salesforce provide, is giving some examples of businesses that are doing this very well. And in the crossover, one of the things we're finding is there was a lot of conversation and debate about a chief customer officer role. And some companies formally define that as an executive suite position, and some really have that as a distributed function. So right now, it's all about how do you define it, how do you measure it, and what's the role of every person in the organization in delivering on it. Next really common theme was about changing the business model. How many of you are working in a business where you're trying to make money in maybe 2 or 3 different sales models right now? Does anybody have this going on? We hear this a lot from businesses who are in a product model, sell a product, and they want to start selling more services, or the reverse. Selling a lot of services, want to start selling more products. So 2 really disruptive forces that we found in this category. The first one, you can see it, it's called the Amazon effect. How many of you are Amazon users? What happens, right? You log in, it's very easy. It arrives on time. It makes recommendations to you. Great memory of who you are, what you've purchased, your preferences. So in the B2C space, lots of pressure for how you engage your customers because of Amazon. Now, to clarify, all the executives, or most executives, said to us, it's not that I want to be Amazon. But it's that the customers of Amazon are also my customers. So when they actually have to call and talk to a customer service person, that's really shocking. In Amazon, do you ever call someone? No. How often do your problems get solved, though, with minimal time and effort? Right? So it's creating disruption in customer expectations. It's also creating disruption in terms of what customers expect from omni-cloud service, being able to do business my way, and having things be easy. The Salesforce effect refers to the business-to-business environment. And what the executives in the business-to-business space told us was, hey, if we're a big business-to-business company that sells physical products, lots of our customers want to switch to something else where they can buy a little bit and do pay-as-you-go kind of models. Right? So what they were messaging back to us was, here's really what it comes down to. Even if we don't work in the high-tech industry, even if we're not in the Amazon retail kind of business, the expectations are changing. And when we try to move into these new business models, it's expensive. We don't know how to make money, but we know that retaining our customers is a big factor. It's a huge risk in that kind of crossover. Next transition and theme that we were hearing is about going fast. So all of the executives indicated to us that they were trying a series of different ways to go fast, but the number one factor that they viewed as critical to their success is getting closer to the front line and better collaboration. And I don't know how many of you have been involved in deploying any collaboration capabilities in your companies. Right. Are you trying to solve some of these same problems, the collaboration at speed? Yeah, how's it going? The technology is easy, the people are challenging, right? That's exactly what keeps coming back, and that's the reason that manager of continuous change is there. All of these executives and all of these senior leaders are starved for people like you sitting in this room to help solve this challenge. And one of the reasons is, in the kinds of roles that you play in your organization, you're used to building things in very small pieces, right? And moving quickly to figure out, does this work? Does it not work? If I build this, do people use it? What works, what doesn't work? And what these executives were seeing and messaging to us was, in order for us to go faster, we need to build in much smaller pieces and enable people with different skill sets to come together for very short, bursty periods of time to solve that problem or try something new. And then we very quickly need to declare victory or defeat and move on. And what they message that they're looking for people like all of us to do is indicate more ways to try that out, to be trying more little prototypes, more little inventions, and be able to have a channel to message back to them what's working and what's not working, right? Which continues to come back to people management, changing what success looks like. Big theme. How many of your companies have newly launched in the past, I'll say 12 months, some kind of employee engagement initiative, task force, tiger team, priority, that's designed to engage you in giving feedback and ideas, right? And or to retain you maybe at your company, right? So what's happening here is in employee empowerment, it's playing out in two different levels in the organization. So at the top level of the organization, the most senior executives that we talked with said, in order to have time to spend with customers and to spend on innovation and to spend with our frontline employees, as a senior executive, a chief marketing officer or a chief information officer, for example, I can't be in charge of everything anymore. And so senior executives were very consistently choosing a term that they sort of used, empowered deputies. I want to take the authority that I have, break it in pieces, and move it further down my reporting chain because it's a way to move faster and to capitalize on more and broader skill sets. So this one is also tied to an acknowledgement that that executive suite can no longer go off in a corner and just sort of come up with a solution and solve a problem and then push it out to the whole organization or the world or the customer base and think it's going to work. So big acknowledgement that it's about taking people then lower in the organization as well and giving all of you the authority, the opportunity, the decision-making room to solve problems very quickly without needing as many approvals and layers of escalation to get it done. So everything breaking down into smaller pieces. The last one I'll call out, do any of you support or work with sales organizations? Yes, so one of the big factors that came out of this, so think about this as technology development meets sales training and effectiveness. And every single VP of sales that we talked with said, it's so expensive for me to hire salespeople, train them, and have them leave, that I'm being much more diligent about, first of all, who I hire, but how much time I invest in them to be successful. And one of the number one factors that they identified for us in helping salespeople be successful are the technology and tools that empower them to do their jobs in a simple and connected way. That became even more important when those salespeople were asked to start selling into a new model. So for example, maybe you've always sold products. Now we're going to give you a quota for services. What is the role of the technology in helping them do that job and in enabling them? Whether that's pushing them content tied to what's in their pipeline, whether that's prompting them with questions to ask, automation was a big deal in this space. And there was just a cry for understand the needs of salespeople and then as quickly as possible build to that. Combating legacy attitudes. I'm sure this never happens to you, but a lot of our executives identified that not only are there lots and lots of data silos, so there's a data legacy that they're trying to combat, but it's the we've always done it this way and it's always worked. And so what was interesting was many of the executives' way to deal with that was just fire everybody who reported to them and start from scratch. And as we've shared this research, we have about 6 really big global customers right now that have invited us to sit with them. They have all just fired their entire executive suite. And they're starting from scratch and they're saying, tell us what you're seeing with other places and other customers so that we can build based on what you're seeing works. Because this has been a very prevalent phenomenon, which is if you're going to bring the legacy attitude forward, we've decided we can't fix you, we'll just fire you and take the risk of starting over. The other piece, and you had called it out earlier, which was the technology can work, but the people might not. And so not only is it about changing the technology and the approach, but it was also about changing the talent. One other one, and I think this might be of particular interest to this group, is when you think about what it takes to deliver this connected customer experience, and when you think about what it takes to break down those data silos, and then be able to deliver the experience your customers expect, the role of the enterprise architect was viewed as priceless. Every CIO, if they did not elevate the enterprise architect to being a direct report, created some kind of forum where that enterprise architect or enterprise architecture team participated in strategic planning, problem solving, literally helping to architect the future. So one of the things that they're thinking about and that we were thinking about then is what's our role in helping to enable this person who's playing a vital role but also getting a lot of visibility probably for the first time. But this was viewed as a really key role to move up the hierarchy, but also a very powerful influencer in where the business was going to go next. So not just the next 3 releases kind of view, but the overall architecture of how to deliver on this vision of a transformed company with a streamlined customer experience. And then the last one that I'll share with you is about creating their own legacies. It's not surprising when you interview a senior leader, we typically would think of this as, hire someone who's going to be your successor or who might go to another company and you'll say, they were my protege, right? This is my legacy in the talent. We found that it went beyond that. Each one of those executives we interviewed wanted the technology to be a piece of their legacy. So I think about it in these terms. It was sort of like this. If I want to have a lasting legacy, I want you to build a monument or a statue to me, right? Just like you would see in your town square at the art museum. But in their minds, that technology that stands the test of time is the equivalent of that museum or statue to their legacy. And so it was one of the also so plagued with adoption Because as a senior leader, if they made a decision about a technology platform or direction to invest in the future, and then it doesn't get adopted or go well, they viewed that as being harmful to their ability to leave a legacy. So for the first time, we're hearing that this just goes beyond the talent. It goes beyond, finding leaders and raising them up to really, what does the technology say about me as a leader? I put this up here not because you need to study every aspect of this, but for each of these executives that we interviewed, we asked them about their process of how they make a decision and who affects that decision. And what you're seeing here is how they interact with one another, and at the bottom, let's call it the money line, right? Follow the flow of the money. When do they go ask for it? The point of this is we're finding that decisions, especially investments in technology and who becomes these empowered deputies, are highly collaborative decisions with lots of points of influence. And the other piece of that, solving problems and employee empowerment and engagement, is the executives are trying to find ways across this life cycle to insert more points of view from people like all of you sitting in this room to say, advise us and help us avoid going down a path of making a big technology decision or investment that it's difficult to reverse and puts us on the wrong path. So there was a lot of discussion in these conversations about how to extract more of what you see, feel, and experience by doing the jobs that you do every day, and being able to lend more perspective much earlier in the process so that we're not playing catch up later. With that, I'll share with you, we do have behind this, and I think we make all the slides available, some specifics for each of those roles that are unique to what they said. Given that we've got 5 minutes left, I want to give you an opportunity to ask some questions or maybe share problems you're trying to solve or how you're doing them with the rest of the group. And we have a microphone so that you can forever be preserved in video with your brilliance. If you have no questions, I'll show you the next couple slides if you want the role-specific breakdown. Do I have any brave question askers, or do you want to see role specifics? Role specifics? All right, here we go. So the VP of Service, this is the job role that is the most frequently identified as the future Chief Customer Officer of the organization. So if you work with VP of Service, this is the promotion that they're trying to get, which means they have to be great at the technology, but also supporting multiple business models and leading that customer experience initiative. We also found that the VP of Service most frequently has to play the role of the diplomat and the negotiator, because they're at the back end of how those go-to-market models change and what customer service people need, but every technology decision affects them. So the universal diplomat and the next most likely person to go to the C-suite. VP of Sales, we talked a lot about talent, right? So how do we get serious about talent? But one factor that all of the VPs of Sales identified where technology helps them and something that affects their ability to retain that employee and help them be productive as quickly and for as long as possible is giving them the authority to make more decisions. So for example, imagine that you're in the Salesforce One app. I just picked that one randomly, obviously. You're in the Salesforce One app. You've got your forecast in there of opportunities. You're sitting with a customer. You have a deal that's in the works. You're ready to take that into a pricing or a scope of work, statement of work. You go into that. You're going to negotiate with the customer. A lot of people are trying to figure out how do they change the window of authority that a salesperson has to negotiate that deal so that they could use a combination of their technology and discretion to close the deal in the moment. But the more authority they had to negotiate, clearly in the best interest of the company at large, the more likely they were to stay. CIO. So this one is interesting because of a couple things. The CIO role is significantly changed over the past couple of years. If you look at any of the Gartner research, it's projecting that by 2020, 35% of CIOs will report to chief marketing officers. So this is a role where they feel, and many of them are reporting to CFOs right now, actually. So they're feeling that their role is under attack, and they now have to serve everyone across the business with technology, and that everyone needs a vote in that decision if they're going to, frankly, keep their jobs. So it's an interesting transformation to IT as a service, which means lots of CIOs are spending time on getting rid of shadow IT. And here's the thought process. If I'm going to be accountable for delivering a safe, secure technology portfolio to the entire organization, I can't have people going off rogue, doing their own thing with servers under their desks. I'm sure none of you do this. I certainly don't either. I don't endorse the practice. So extreme collaboration, but they are most under attack. Their role is most shifting. And in this decision charts that we built, their life cycle is much longer than those other 3 job titles, and lots more people get a vote in those technology decisions that are made. And then last one, the Chief Marketing Officer. So, in the past, Chief Marketing Officer has been a role largely about building the brand, and I will call it capturing hearts, right? And so because of that, there's a particular skill set that you need to be a great storyteller, marketer, positioner of your brand. Well, now the perception of your brand is what customers want it to be, right? And what they create it to be. And because Chief Marketing Officers, for the first time, need to capture emotion, but are being measured to ROI and need technology tools to make it happen, Chief Marketing Officers are looking at a very divergent talent base. So for the first time, most of them have the traditional marketer, storyteller type people reporting to them, but also technologists. They're getting managed to metrics and measurements for the first time that they've never had. So they're struggling with this crossover of, those are 2 really different skills. It's like left brain, right brain scenario. So this is an organization that's changing a lot. And one force that's really driving that is bringing outside agency work in-house, and marketing organizations basically building their own digital agencies and offering that at charge as a service to the rest of the organization. So it's interesting that they have a whole startup mode going, and I'll call it entrepreneurship, right? They're taking something they used to pay for in outside services, bringing it inside for greater control, greater brand consistency, and also to serve the rest of the organization with this as a service. For reals, that's the end. So we've got 5 seconds. So you can tweet me, you can ask me a question after, or if there's any brave people, you still have your chance at a question now. Thank you.